I will admit it this though, very few people would have actually heard about KaiOS, just let alone use it. KaiOS, meaning Open Operating System, believe it or not, had actually held the position of the second most used OS in India after Android until December 2019, which means that it was used more than iOS in that time frame. Even now, it is only marginally smaller than iOS in terms of usage. Globally, it is ranked 5th in the list of the most used OS. So what is this exactly? But most importantly, how did it reach that position? Mind you, the percentage is on the lower side, but still that is great work. I am Devathan and you're watching Tech Aisle. Let's begin. So, for the beginning, let's just rewind back to 2016 when all the times were good. A San Diego-based startup, KaiOS, sees a potential in tapping into the feature phone market, especially in areas like India and Africa, where many still do not have access to the internet, mainly because the phones are either too expensive or they just simply don't want to use smartphones because of the complexities. But there's no challenge or you don't get much by being a simple feature phone company, right? So that is when they had a thought of just why not have a fusion of a feature phone and a modern OS in one. They realized that they could take the source code from the discontinued Mozilla OS, which was an open source software, which meant that the data and the programming codes are out there for anyone to use. So they create an OS taking inspiration from the Mozilla OS and naming it after the Chinese word for open, Kai, and ultimately naming it KaiOS. What KaiOS basically was, it was a smart OS but for feature phones. It had WhatsApp, YouTube, Facebook, Google Maps, and even Google Assistant, which could mean that you can take voice search. So it gives a feel of a smartphone for those who have not yet used it, but without spending much and in a form factor that they are familiar with. It also supports 4G LTE, Volt, Wi-Fi and GPS in a form factor which doesn't consume much battery and has an optimized user software and doesn't consume much memory. That means that KaiOS can run on a system which has less than 256 MB of RAM, which in turn means that you can actually use YouTube in a phone with less than 256 MB of RAM. It even receives over-the-air OTA updates. It even has an app store called Kai Store with over 500 apps. But then came the turning point for KaiOS. India's telecom giant Jio decides that they're coming into the feature phone market, and guess what? They have used KaiOS as the OS. Up until then, it was only accessible to a limited number of users. But with JioPhone, that just changed the game altogether. Through JioPhone and its successor JioPhone 2, their business has expanded multifold. JioPhone has sold about 17 million units till now, making the KaiOS accessible to more people. And then in 2018, Google decided to invest $22 million into KaiOS. Jio, the company which made them more accessible, decided to invest $7 million for a 16% stake in the company. And the other companies which has invested in them include Mozilla, Facebook, Qualcomm, Twitter, HMD Global. The Nokia 8110 4G, nicknamed the banana phone because of its design, was also launched in the US and also ran on the KaiOS, which made the KaiOS accessible to more people in the United States. And this was a highlight in the timeline of KaiOS because with this phone, they gave the option of jailbreaking KaiOS. Then in March 2020, Mozilla and KaiOS teamed up together to announce a better version of KaiOS with support for Gecko browser engine and better testing facilities. This change gave KaiOS 4 years worth of performance and security updates and also tons of new features. So how this exactly worked out? I would say it has two aspects to it. The first is the POV of the mobile service providers like the app developers, game developers, then you have the mobile carriers like Airtel, Jio, Vodafone Idea, etc. And the second one is the POV that we are familiar with, that of the customers. But more importantly, the people who cannot afford smartphones, and that is the focus of this POV. So starting with the POV of the second group of people, that is people who cannot afford smartphones. So what they have got is access to the internet with reduced cost and also in a form factor that they're familiar with. They also get limited data cost, reduced data usage because of restrictions, and also data rewards. But the other point of view is a bit more interesting, I would say. For a very long time, mobile data carriers have not been able to tap into the feature phone market, because what do you use data for when you're using a feature phone, right? You cannot use YouTube, you cannot use WhatsApp, you cannot use Facebook. With this limited usage, the data that we are using is reduced, right? Or at least very minimal. So these mobile carriers, they profit in these feature phone market is very minimal, and that is where these smart feature phones come into play. Once you start using YouTube, WhatsApp, Facebook, etc., you are getting a massive leap from 2G to 4G, and with that, these mobile carriers can extract more money from it. Mobile apps and game developers can get access to millions of people with these smart feature phones, which without these smart feature phones they would not have simply gotten access to, that is until they switched into smartphones. And then there are AI and Internet of Things focused companies which have gotten more access to more people. Sorry for interrupting, but if you're liking this content, then we hugely appreciate it if you could hit that like button, and if you're new here, I make technology videos every week, so consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the video. Now, concluding, I want to say this. KaiOS is a very well implemented program with benefits to many, and I would say millions of people. It has helped more people get access to the internet, which in today's terms means that you get access to education, you get access to increase your creativity, you get access to let the world know of your talents. You're also getting the obvious entertainment that you're getting with internet. And also this has helped the mobile data carriers in a massive way, giving them access to millions of people and thereby increasing their profits. Alright, that's it for today. Hope you guys liked it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next week. So that is when they had the thought of why not just